Good day, it's Tony Fortunato from the technology firm. Today we will be continuing our series with application baselining and performance. Today we're going to look at HTTP and more specifically firewalls. And then the reason why is actually really interesting. I don't want to do a spoiler alert, so just hang in there. I think you're going to find this quite interesting. So the review and goal. So as a previous article, I showed you how to get started with setting up and testing your computers for performance and application testing. This is an example of application testing, not so much performance, even though this will impact performance if you kind of get my drift. In this article, we're going to test and perform some protocol analysis with HTTP and firewalls. The goal here is to learn about the protocol along with various server settings. So I'm going to actually walk you through a little bit of server stuff if you are not familiar with that. So I'm going to use the built-in Microsoft IIS server that comes with Windows 10. I'm going to use Chrome, Internet Explorer, wget, and Wireshark. Before we get into this, I think it's really important for me just to throw out my little disclaimer that I did in the last session as well. This is more about methodology, right? Don't get hung up on Chrome or IIS or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? You can replicate this methodology with practically anything that you have at work, okay? The desktop was going to be my server. The laptop's going to be my client. They're connected to 1 gig ports on a Cisco 3750 and they're on the same VLAN. That's all we really need to know right now. The IIS server install. So if you've never done this before, I'll give you just a few little tips and tricks to kind of walk through it. You're going to figure it out pretty quick once you get to the right spot. You go to your control panel, you go to programs, and then turn Windows features on or off. It's right there. Once you go there, turn Windows features on or off, and you will see Internet Information Services. Even though we're concentrating on HTTP right now, you might want to turn FTP server on anyways, because it may come up a little bit later on in some other series. But other than that, just check your little boxes. It all depends on what version of Windows you have. Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows 10. Even within each operating system, there's various flavors of it. So this is just mine. Please don't get caught up on this if you don't have it. Just get yourself a free web server like HFS or Apache or something like that. So I want to enable directory browsing. So if I type in the IP address of the web server, it gives me a list of files. So I can easily browse for a file when I do my download test. So I want to set that up ahead of time. So you hit the start button or the little Windows icon, little flag gizmo in the bottom left corner. From there you're going to see Internet Information Services. Directory browsing, you're going to right click, and then from there you're going to open the feature. When you do that, you will see enable on the right hand side. There's a kind of a gray area, if you will. Hit enable, and there you go, you're done. So now we can browse the web server folders. I'm obviously not asking you to do this on a production server. This is playing around and learning. We also want to set up for HTTPS for some other sessions. So what we're going to do is create a self-signed certificate. And that way, you don't have to get a certificate request and all that kind of jazz. This is just, again, this is lab work, right? So it's not imperative that we have an actual real certificate. So self-signed certificate, the way you do that is within that management screen under IIS, you'll see server certificates, create self-signed. Here you just give a friendly name for the certificate, give it the server name, or just call it server if you'd like. And then from there, we go to our sites. We're going to add a website. Basically, you're going to do HTTPS 443 and the certificate that you created. It's going to be in the pull down menu. You just click on it and you're done. All right. I also want to put a file in the web server folder. Again, this is going to be for later on. So I have a 1.326 gig file that I called 1326 GB. And basically, you go to that folder, the root folder, you drop that in there. I also renamed the default IIS start files. I just gave them .old so they don't pop up. And that's pretty well it. Okay. So now what we're going to do is turn off the firewall on the server. And I also encourage you to turn it off on the client as well. We want to see everything, okay? Because you're going to find out why this is important in just a moment. And we want to capture and record what happens under specific scenarios. So what happens when you try to connect to a web server, the service is not running and there's no firewall. Okay, and then what do you do when the firewall's, what does it look like when the firewall's enabled? So that's kind of important. So the first thing we're going to do is stop the service, and this is to replicate if you had a web server and it failed, right? And that does happen, right? Services do crash. So what would that look like from an application perspective, from a protocol perspective, and same with the firewall. We're going to disable the firewall. So first test is going to be with the server and firewall down. From the client, we're going to start a trace with Wireshark, so our filters host space the IP of the server. Start your capture. We're going to use Chrome. We're also going to use Internet Explorer. We're also going to use wget. We're going to wait for the timeout error, and then we're going to stop the capture, and we're going to repeat it for all the apps. So if you take a look here, the Chrome results, it's interesting. The server is down, right? The service is down. And you can see Chrome says that it refused to connect. So that's the way it says that, is its connection refused. So it's kind of nice for you to understand what the application is trying to tell you versus what is going on the wire. So you can see there's a SYN request from the client on port 80, and you get a reset from the server because obviously that service is not running, it's not listening on that port number, however you want to say it, and that's why you get the resets back. And then it goes on and on until this thing pops up on the screen. Then we're going to turn on the actual firewall and rerun our Chrome test. And you'll see same error on the screen from the web browser, but on the wire it's totally different. You'll see SYN, there's no resets at all coming back. What was interesting was Chrome took a lot longer for this to pop up on my screen. Whereas before, when the firewall was on, it just bang, it popped up like almost immediately on my screen. There was a noticeable delay for this to pop up on my screen. Now we're going to try Internet Explorer with no firewall. Page cannot be displayed. And it's funny because the page cannot be displayed. Not the service is down, the server's down, I can't connect. It just says the page can't be displayed. So again, it's important for you to find out how every application reports the same issue. On the wire again, we saw what we saw with the Chrome trace. You see the SYNs and the resets. Then we're going to enable the firewall, and you can see the resets go away. Same error, and that screen took a lot longer than Chrome. So that's really important to understand as well. Now we go on to wget. Again, I'm just using another app just to see what it looks like. And you should do this with your real applications that are web-based. Find out what happens when these things break, right? Find out what the error messages really say. It says connecting to the server on port 80 failed, bad file descriptor. Now, isn't that helpful? So it's just important for you to understand what it's telling you versus what the problem is. And we see the same pattern, SYN, reset, and so on. Then we'll enable the firewall for wget. And this is a really interesting pattern. It starts up and it fails, bad file descriptor, and then it retries. And it's going to keep retrying. And I think the default is 6 times or something like that before it actually stops. But that's a great example of it saw something didn't work, it didn't see the resets, which it relied on, so it just kept trying. It just kept retrying and retrying and retrying. So at the wire level, at the packet level, you can see all the SYNs with no resets coming back as well. So even just as simply as turning the service off, enabling, disabling your firewalls, you'll see a totally different behavior with your applications. So this is well worth trying. This is well worth playing with. And you'll find out what your applications are really trying to tell you when things are broken. So that's this session. On the next session, we'll actually do some performance stuff, and I look forward to showing you that as well. So have a good day. Bye for now.